obviously we have, a very changing global fabric, or a very strongly changing global fabric in 2022 with Russia and Ukraine. And obviously it's probably outside the scope of this conversation to discuss, the specifics of that. But it is creating a refocus on defence. And spending around defence. And there's a lot of talk in the property investment community at the moment about Darwin, which might be re-emerging out of a slump. It's looking like the stars are starting to align once again, and it's looking relatively bullish. And then also Townsville. A lot of investors at the moment are talking about Townsville, two areas where defence plays a key part. How do you feel the focus on defence may change in the next few years? And I feel... is defence spending a positive or a negative? Defence spending, it means that there is a risk factor attached to it. There is the need to have a base there. Ongoing employment, obviously, and attracting the military spend there is a positive thing. But does that mean that it is also at risk?
Well, I certainly do think that concerns at a geopolitical level do create the rationale for a percentage point to be added to defence spending as a proportion of our budget. I think defence is around about 2%. If it was at about 3%, the full percentage point is another $20 billion that then gets scattered across a number of locations across Australia. Laverick Barracks, of course, in Townsville, Robertson Barracks in Darwin. But there's a whole range of other locations as well, certainly on the West Coast, with Perth, various locations there, and the northern suburbs of Adelaide with defence manufacturing and defence spending, particularly submarines and so forth. That would have an impact. Kind of related to that is the idea that we need to be far more self-sufficient in manufacturing, particularly smart and advanced manufacturing, and that we should be bringing home those manufacturing jobs or growing further jobs locally rather than offshoring them, as we have done previously. And you think, well, what cities on the Australian continent have strong manufacturing heritage and skill bases? Well, that'd be Melbourne, that'd be Geelong, that'd be Ballarat, Bendigo, Adelaide, probably Bathurst. There's a number of them around the country where there is defence manufacturing and manufacturing more generally skills, even in parts of Sydney, parts of Brisbane and so forth. You think over the longer term, I think Australians are going to demand more secure supply chains. That means more manufacturing locally. And that goes to the argument of warehouses, logistics, advanced manufacturing facilities. These are middle and outer suburbs. Again, this goes to my argument that edge of the capital cities and the lifestyle zones just beyond can actually be the targets of new spending and new skills and workers who will want to live in lifestyle areas within an easy commute of those workplaces.
So is what you're saying, just to clarify, maybe not the emphasis on the bases, the Darwin and the Toowoomba bases, but maybe the actual manufacturing associated with defence may, cause the property-related impact?
Very much so. In fact, there's a whole industry, of course. The whole northern part of Adelaide is driven by defence, by space, and there's a whole range of industries that hang off a decision to increase our exposure to these sectors going forward. And they're very localised and can be quite transformative, and especially if you look at property prices on, say, the northern edge of Adelaide, or on the western side of Melbourne, or wherever, let alone in regional cities. Now, I think Laverick Barracks in Townsville had a boosting impact. Certainly, 20 years ago, where there was concerns about terrorism and so forth. So there was a bump, if you like, in defence spending, and then that sort of finds its way into the entire community. There's a logic to it that I think most certainly hangs together. Now, on a big picture level, I do think that you should be looking at investors, and anyone in Australia should be looking at the big picture drivers of the 2020s, and there'll be a shift in geopolitical alignment that will impact defence manufacture and so forth. The demographic shift of the millennials to their late 30s, early 40s, I think that, and then work from home. Now, these are very powerful mega trends that I think are going to reshape Australia away from the traditional model of, like the fried egg, where you have the rich, creamy yolk in the inner city with all the, the best properties and so forth, and then sort of flattening out to the edge. I think it's going to be a bit more scrambled up in the 2020. I'm continuing my food themes, aren't I?
I think it's good.
Avocado.
It's making me hungry, and I did have a nice mixed up omelette for breakfast.